All right, we are doing it. It's happening. Matt Crotts and I are talking live on camera. This is going to be an interview. The audience may chat amongst themselves. You may be invited if you're very, very nice to join the discussion, but we'll see. This is mostly to find out more about Matt and his graphic novel series. How do you pronounce this? Kyrie or
Yeah,
Kyrie? How? Because Americans who aren't familiar with it are automatically, your brain defaults to something not Kyrie.
yeah. Most people honestly call it Kyrie, probably because the basketball, uh, like the Celtics point guard or whoever he is. I don't know. I don't watch basketball, but his first name is Kyrie. I'm just glad when they know how to spell it, so they know where to buy it. But um, it's Kyrie. It's based on Kyrie Eleison, as you would expect.
And what does that mean?
Lord have mercy.
Okay.
And that
And
was
I'm only going to play this. I'm going to play this very straight. If you ever watched C-SPAN back in the day, there was the Brian Lamb was his name, and he always did these great, very sort of deadpan style interviews, but he was really good at pulling
uh,
information from his guests. So I'm going to play it Brian Lamb style and ask you. So what language is that from?
yeah, it's Greek, and it's it's a way of me exploring a part of the empire, a part of the Roman world that doesn't get enough credit. There's a reason half the Roman world was Greek speaking from its very from the very start that the Roman world like the Romans had an empire. And it's because of Alexander the Great. They never stopped speaking Greek, and um, Kyrie is about frontiers and edges of empire and where those empires, the concepts of what the empire thinks of itself, how those things start to fray at the frontier. You know what
Mm-hmm.
different people think that they can get from the empire, what they want to take from it, what they want to give to it, uh, and it's tested in the outlaw landscape of third century North Africa.
Okay. Uh, so what? Let's go back a little bit in time. What was? Were you always a comic book reader, graphic novel reader, as a kid? What inspired you to move into this genre?
Yeah, I read. I had some European friends, and I lived overseas in some Commonwealth countries. I lived in New Zealand for a little bit growing up, and everybody outside of the U.S. everybody loves comics. All little boys and a lot of little girls read comics, but they're not reading superhero comics overseas. Even in Canada and in Mexico, they're reading all kinds of genres, and comics is a medium, not a genre, outside of the U.S. So people are reading adventure stories, are reading historical fiction, crime, drama, romance, that sort of thing, treasure hunting. They're reading Tintin and Asterix and all of that. Anything that young adults like to read, there's comic book versions of those.
Mm-hmm.
And then I came back to the States and everybody was reading Spawn and Spider Man. And I was like, I can see like drawing that stuff in my Trapper Keeper, but there's no story. Like where's the cursed tombs that need to be cracked open to get the gold out? Where's the exotic landscapes and uh, the you know the Orientalism and the cultural exchange kind of stuff, and where's the weird historical fiction adventure? There's none of it. And it's in local comic shops, which I don't have access to. It looks like just a bunch of adults are going there. This is in the 90s.
Right,
There's
right.
no spinner racks by the time I'm interested. So
So were you? was when 300 the only I mean I my knowledge of the genre of graphic novels is very limited, but it first came to my attention when the movie 300 came out. So apparently there
Oh,
this
fun.
big phenomenon had broken, and it made it the news that it inspired the making of a movie, and I found the movie interesting at the
Hmm.
time. Uh, and so was that encouraging to you, because that's doing some of the stuff that you're talking about? That's bringing was whoever that particular graphic novel integrated history and the comic book art
Yeah.
genre together.
So what? So can I explore that a little bit? So
Yes,
what?
please educate me. As I said before we started, I am a complete total novice on this subject. So anything you can do to help.
Well, no, I'm just curious. So when you say, so Frank Miller did a graphic novel called 300,
Right.
and that was the first time you knew about graphic
I
novels, as in like
First time
brief
I knew
stories.
anything that serious was, I mean, it seemed like a pretty serious endeavor, and a lot of people took it seriously. Um,
So not superhero stuff, but
right. And yeah, that stuff was completely off my radar. I mean, I knew it existed, but it
yeah,
wasn't, it just was not a space I explored.
yeah, yes. And Frank Miller was inspired in turn by a novel called The Hot Gates, I think it was.
Okay.
Uh, I forget, but you're right. I mean, to a lot of people's, as far as anyone was concerned, it was, 300 was the first iteration of that, and then and then the movie, which was that 2007 or 8, something like
Something like
that.
that. Yeah. It's six, 7 or 8. It was during the Iraq War,
Yeah,
and things were hot and weird, and
that's a good point. Is it a coincidence?
oh no, it's I no. See, that's the thing. My critique at the time
Uh
was
huh.
I found the movies both compelling and a bit
Yeah,
horrifying, because
saber
real
rattling.
in my lifetime was the first, frankly, in popular media, it was the first time in my lifetime that the Spartans were
Hmm.
featured in so positive a light.
Oh, fascinating. Hmm.
And it struck me as a kind of um, potentially fascist turn, because even the imagery is a bit fash in the movie.
I love where
Um,
this is going. You just get to talk about
it triggered
fascism
all
so
my
freely.
democratic socialist
I
tendencies,
know.
and I thought this is not good. But I didn't at the same time didn't really know what to do with it. I mean, because I mean there are admirable aspects to the Spartans, but not I'd never seen it so I the last time I had seen that imagery magnified and glorified so openly is really got to go way back to the 1930s to see that. And it just was like a
Yeah.
little freaky for someone who of my ilk persuasion.
I remember there was a break. There was a division. It divided people my age and younger at the time. A lot of people were uncomfortable. There wasn't a language for talking about uh, male friendship and working out and looking cool, looks
Hmm.
maxing, and all this sort of stuff. So many people were uncomfortable with it, and it was in the thick of the hipster era. So people were like, "Well, this is homoerotic, and that's how we're going to label this as the bad thing,"
Hmm.
which is interesting. And it was a lot of people who were left leaning who were like, "This is just repressed, um, male homoeroticism that was being explored," and then other
Mm.
people were like, "Okay, well, it's stupid. It's who's the director? Henry in the chat is going to know before I do. But the guy who went on to make a lot of superhero or comic book movies, that was kind of his debut of as far as blockbuster stuff goes, and he really cut his chops making these kind of heroic superhero type male expressions of, you know, aspirational physique kind of stories. And there were a lot of people who were like, I don't know, like maybe can the bros just vibe? Can they chill? The book was really good. Nobody had any controversial takes. I don't think the book actually, you'd be interested. The book actually is told through the eyes, unlike the graphic novel, Frank Miller's graphic novel, and unlike the movie, the book actually is told through the eyes of a slave who is physically deformed and can't fight with a sword. He doesn't have, he's lost,
Okay.
Somebody had cut off some of his fingers, I think, and so he couldn't hold a sword. And it's Apollo who shows up in a vision at some point and lets him know, you know, that swords were kind of uncivilized, that he always preferred bows and arrows. It kind of alludes to the idea, like, you know, maybe you could help, you could support the team by learning to shoot. And he contributes to that, that final stand with a bow and arrow and dies alongside his master. I don't know, maybe that's problematic in itself, but it's a very sweet story. I thought, and it's flattened a lot in the comic, as you would expect, and in the movie. I don't know if you want to do anything with that, but I just remember there were a lot of guys that were like divided on, like, can guys just care about each other without it being gay? There was
Sure. Yeah, you can go there. I mean, but I don't think that's. I don't see. I don't. It just struck me in time. Once I adapted, you know, it's like when you get dropped into a pool of cold water, and it's just shocking at first, and then your body adapts, and it was kind of that whole period. You know, because as I think I've mentioned elsewhere, that Abu Ghraib was kind of was a real break moment for me. And in terms of realizing we're not in the 20th century anymore. And it's, you know, and so that was a little hint, a cultural hint of that. And yet seems to be, we're in some new moment, and I can probably, 300 was part of that, the movie. And just for me, just kind of going, this is interesting. We'll see where it goes. I mean, I could be all horrified by it. I remember there was also around that same time a lot of new imagery coming out of Russia around trying to build a cult around Putin. And there was these women singing a pop song. They're trying to do a pop anthem around how great Putin was. And I went, oh, the world is going dark. I just didn't know how long it would take for the lights to go out completely. They are not out completely yet, but it just like, we're shifting. And this was close to 20 years ago now. And so it's really funny, and along these arcs of history move. You know, they're slow, but at the same time, it's sporadically jolting at the same time. So you have a big blow or some earthquake, something shakes things, and then the dust settles, and you think you kind of come to a new normal. But just as you adapt to the new normal, things shake some more, and we seem to be in that period. But it's been happening for 20, 25 years.
I heard Tucker Carlson say recently that we executed Japanese soldiers for waterboarding.
Yes, we did. Put them on trial. It wasn't just summer. It was just not random.
No.
It was through the process of law.
Yes. Legally through. Yeah, it was considered a war crime.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we did it.
Well, you know, that's one reason why I wanted to write a graphic novel series about Alexander the Great, because I think he's more relevant than ever. And I talked with the last interview I did was with apparently a fairly far right wing guy. I don't know. He didn't want to talk about any of that. He just wanted to talk about comics. So it was easy conversation. But I talked about Alexander the Great with him, and I think it's relevant for that guy too, for a lot of us, because Alexander he kind of sifts you. You either look at him and you say that's the standard of excellence of what people can do. You see him as a success story,
Mm-hmm.
or you see him as a dramatic cautionary tale of what it means when you succumb to the stories in your head and you subdue and destroy half the ancient world because of the stories you tell yourself. and it's I told this guy about Achilles, who was Alexander the Great's hero. That was his patron saint, so to speak. He identified with him strongly, and it's an ongoing. And Romans would debate this too. Like, was Alexander really living up to Achilles, or was he actually identifying? Like, was he patterning the tragedy as much as the success? Because Achilles is a tragic story. In a real, like, the Trojan War is a profound story about someone who is built for greatness, but consistently and repeatedly eschews it and desecrates what he should be doing. He doesn't live up to that. He thinks he deserves something by right. He thinks he deserves it because of his birthright, in a way. But he doesn't have the virtue to live into that. And ultimately, that comes down to humility. It takes someone like Hector of the Shining Helm, Hector of Troy, to walk out to the battlefield knowing he will lose, but doing it for the sake of others. To actually, Hector wins that battle by having more virtue, in a way, in his death, in his defeat, that Achilles has in defeating him and then desecrating his body and making fun of the family and dragging his corpse around the city and drawing tears from Priam's eyes. Once Achilles realizes the tears coming out of Priam's eyes, he realizes that he's actually acted shamefully. And in winning, the way he thought he should win is just by might is right. Achilles, and that was the exact opposite approach that he should have taken. Actually, Hector had more nobility and more of a warrior spirit than Achilles did, the man who could never be defeated, so to speak. So he was defeated by winning his way. And in that, we don't get the end of the story. There are lost chapters of what happens at the ends of Achilles' life. But in that, you kind of get the silver lining, the glimmer of Achilles kind of reforms and realizes Hector should be buried in honor. He was a greater man than I was. And I completely misunderstood what it means to be a great man. It's not might makes right. That's what the Greek tradition is centrally fixated on, is that tension, that temptation, and the tragedy of perennially young men trying to make right out of might. And it doesn't work that way. And Achilles is centrally that. And then Alexander the Great, who's the real life Achilles, if there ever was one, is patterns that as well. He's just as much a triumph as he is a tragedy. He tries to make might make right, and it all slips out of his hands. It all slips through his fingers. So,
just on the subject of Alexander, it really takes Alexander to defeat Alexander, it seems. It was only he's unlike Napoleon, or any of the great heroes. I mean, I guess there are a couple like him that just exhaust, but he's so young, but he just he undermines himself. He doesn't. Nobody ever really defeats him. He just he kind of runs. He gets to India and stalls, and his men simply are exhausted. Right. And I'm trying to recall off. I wasn't planning to talk about Alexander, but they kind of don't want to keep going. He keeps wanting to go further. He's got this substantial enemy before him to the east, but his men force him to more or less stop. And so he turns them around and they make that long march across the desert west, which he just runs out. I mean, it's not, he's never really.
That's when when he turns back, that's when
it breaks him.
His mortality at that point.
Yeah, I guess you could say maybe it breaks him. It's not.
Yeah.
Which is, well, it's kind of, I've never thought of it like this, but just he sees maybe the realization that he too is mortal.
Yeah.
And that's what breaks him. He needed the fiction that he was a god. I don't know. But back to your books, your story. I've got all three. And they're really beautifully made, by the way. So if anybody wants to spend a little money on them, I'm sorry that we couldn't do this before Christmas. You said I just saw a post that you're like we just passed the deadline to order for Christmas because they would make a great stocking stuffer.
Maybe I can make an exception. Maybe I got something. Maybe I have secret stashes.
Okay. Okay. We will have to. We're going to have to post the details in the show description after the fact, and so people have a link. What's in the live chat? Where should they find you to order these?
Sorry, I was muted. I will post the link. This comment has failed to post.
Actually, put it in the private chat, and then I can put it as a banner even, and we can run a banner underneath.
So, one of the things I'm exploring, Mark, is it's right smack in the middle of the 3rd century. And for those who think about Rome a lot, they know that the 3rd century is the crisis point. The crisis of the 3rd century is what people often refer to. It's the decline, but not yet the fall of the Roman Empire. It's the definitive decline point. And there are a series of emperors who try to make Rome great again.
Right.
And how do you do that? What did make Rome great? They're already backward looking, and they're already thinking reactionarily in a way, and they're thinking what are we losing and how can we reclaim it? And there's various kind of workshopped attempts by Decius at the time of Kyrie, who decides that there's some strange primitive Middle Eastern religion that they meet in strange places, and they talk about their cult leader in weird ways, and some are saying they're eating and drinking his blood. They meet in cemeteries, they commune with the dead, they talk in weird languages. Some say that they're possessed by a spirit, and that turned out to be Christianity. And Decius's plan was, whatever is going on, there needs to be a spiritual revival for Rome if we're going to have a practical, religion's upstream from politics, right? So we gotta have a spiritual revival to revive our stability as an empire. And so, people were asked to sign on the dotted line. You don't even have to believe it, but can you just demonstrate that you genuflect, as Alexander asked his generals to do to him. Can you bow in obeisance to the genius of the emperor? And many Christians did,
Mm-hmm.
and later repented, and it was this big controversy, as you know. And many Christians did not, and it was one of these big inflection points for the early church that divided them tremendously. And one of the main characters is a victim of that scenario. It's just not explicitly stated. That comes out in the fourth and final book, which I'm working on. But that becomes a moment where people say, well, if we're going to make Rome great again, we're going to have to get everybody spiritually and ritually aligned. And there's way too many Middle Eastern influences on Roman politics. It's eternally relevant.
Interesting. So was your interest okay, going back to the formation story, your origins, interest in history first or art?
It was art. I didn't have any interest in history, and then I graduated college, and then it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I don't know what it is about entering your 20s. You're like, I don't know where I am. I don't know how I got here. I don't have my parents as a framing anymore, maybe. I'm getting married. I don't know how to like situate myself. And I did the thing that a lot of young men do. And you just devour history. It's just so that you have footing. You just know where you're at,
Was it history of religion, or what history struck you first? There's lots of history to study. Was it a subject, or just all history fascinated you?
Yeah, it's all history. It's all history. You know what it is, Mark, is it's probably all the weird places that my dad moved us to growing up, where I realized there are corners of this planet, there are cultures and probably time periods that are just as enriching and fascinating as all the famous periods are, and if you just have the patience, and you have 2 ears and only one mouth, like you can learn so much about 16th century, like early Mughal poetry. You could learn so much about the human experience, just as enriching as you can from reading the Iliad. You just have to have more patience to walk through that. But that's what excited me. What I realized, that you don't just have to receive, you can actually go have an adventure and learn what your brothers and sisters in Adam are doing over there in that period of time that is distance from you, but you can access them through books and archaeology. You could spend time with them as your peers and learn from them.
Let's go. Do you recall how you guys globetrotted, and where did your dad take you? I assume military, right? Did you say that earlier? Military family?
No, actually, he was a professor
Okay.
of hospitality and tourism management.
Oh, interesting.
So everybody.
So where did you go? Where did you travel then? That's real. That's interesting. But so where did you?
Yeah.
Where did he take you? Because that could take you all over the place.
Yeah, everyone wanted an American professor teaching him about those things, and he was happy to provide that. So I went to Denmark a couple times.
For how long are we talking about? Were these short stays, long stays?
Those would be short. Those would be like a month. He'd do a lot of workshop things. I spent a year and a half in New Zealand, did Canada a couple times. And then while he was acquiring, my early life was him going and acquiring his postdoc. You got to put a whole bunch of letters after your name. And so it was Oregon, North Carolina twice, then Florida, and then not getting his tenure. He did finally get it in South Carolina. So there was, inside the U.S., there was just a lot of that. And then there'd be a lot of week-long trips where he'd take us to like short things. Like there's several trips in Europe, like Italy and that sort of thing.
So I
So
imagine he's busy. Are you free to roam the cities and check out the country, or did your mom kind of keep a whip hand on you guys, keep you out of trouble? And did you have siblings? Were you traveling with siblings, or are you an only kid?
I have a younger sister, and yeah, the three of us, my mom, my sister, and I, would just paddle around the towns and explore things. Yeah, he was very. I think he's always he's not the best with social. Um, he doesn't
His,
have a lot of social
his
work.
expertise is in hospitality, but he's not real social.
Yeah,
Little irony there, Matt. Just saying.
yeah. Well, he's from the South, so he knows how to posture very well.
Ah, that explains why you're so charming. See,
Yeah, I know how to
it's
fake
all
it.
fake. It's all fake.
So, but his way of helping us, raising us in a way, was bringing us along with these things, and then he would go do his work the whole time.
But that's a tremendous opportunity.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
it was
At one
disorienting.
level.
Yeah, in a
Yeah,
good way.
that's true. That's true. There's good things
Yeah.
and bad things. I'd rather stay at home, play games, hang out with my friends,
Hmm.
than maybe go somewhere where you don't know anybody for a month or 2 weeks or a year and a half. I can imagine that being very disorienting. So how old were you during these periods? When did it begin and when did it kind of settle down for you?
I think it settled down by high school, 14,
Okay.
15. And by then the damage was done.
The damage was done. In what sense? What do you mean by damage? And
I knew too much, Mark.
you'd seen too much of the world.
I knew far too much. I knew that things could be otherwise. And he settled us in Charleston, South Carolina, which have you ever been to Charleston? Have you?
I know it's the birthplace of the Confederacy,
Yeah. Yeah. What you wouldn't
but it
know
is
that.
a remarkable, as I recall, it's like a remarkably, it's itself a very charming city.
Yeah. It's it's difficult. It's changed a bit since the 90s, but and just in terms of everyone discovered it, and so the culture has watered down a bit. But it was actually one of those places that you've probably heard about or wondered about if it still existed in a small town capacity in rural environments. This is a proper, 400-year-old city
Yeah.
that if your last name doesn't match some particular streets, and if you can't point to some particular buildings, you're not really
You're a
not fully
foreigner.
welcome here. You're not
Okay.
really from around here. And
Okay.
yeah, and there are people, there'd be white kids with the same last name as the black kids, and
Hmm.
they've been there for 300 years,
Hmm.
and you get to navigate that in high school together. Say, I wonder, wait, why do you have the same last name?
Well, a city with lots of skeletons and in lots of closets, and I assume you're coming in as a kind of outsider, settling there,
Yeah,
there's people who have the map and people who don't.
yeah, and you can't buy your way in. You can't acquire the map. It has to be given to you, and you got to be there a couple generations deep. And so they were very nice about it, but they let me know that I wasn't. I was always going to be a tourist in that sort of situation. So I made sure to leave as soon as I could.
So, okay, that was a solution to the problem.
It just never, yeah, I was never I couldn't marry into that kind of world. I couldn't. It's very old world. If there is an old world, that's kind of something you've touched on before, Bart. Something about the Old South. It does still. There are pockets that still celebrate an old world, like a Camelot
Hmm.
aesthetic of. It feels like the old world and the new world in a way. It's not the
Hmm.
frontier. Thank you very much. And it wants to let you know that we have our ways, and we established them before there was a Declaration of Independence. In a way, Charleston is one of those
Charleston was
cities.
key, was one of the key centers for the American Revolution. If anybody's watching Ken Burns series right now,
Oh yeah,
Charleston comes up a lot.
I highly recommend visiting. Highly recommend it. It's amazing.
So you can't buy, not can't even charm your way in at the cotillions, whatever a cotillion is.
I couldn't figure
Couldn't
it
do
out.
it. No winning. So you leave, but you go to, you settle. Well, okay, let's still got to set up your story. How old are you? We're talking your formative years. Are you a teenager in the 90s?
Yep. Yeah, I'm 40. I just turned 40. So
Okay. So
late
you're
90s. Like one of the states we lived in was Florida, and that was the only state that felt like a frontier in a way, and frontiers are great.
mhm.
Curie is about frontiers. It's a place where you can make a name for yourself, Mark. You could set out on your own, and you're at the edge of things. People,
Mhm.
the 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 long arm of culture has to stretch a little bit farther to touch you, and it struggles to do that. You can kind of be out of the grasp of expectation a bit more.
Well,
So,
cultures overlap in Florida.
and cultures overlap, which is great. So then you can kind of blend, and you can narratively mix. And
So you like that.
oh, I love it. I feel so much at home in those situations.
And can you thank your dad moving you around the world, making you like that?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Interesting.
That was probably
How's your mom in the fix? You don't talk much about your mom. What you I mean, other than saying that she was one kind of, you guys traveled around together to while your dad's working. How important is your mom in your formation as a person?
Yeah, I
Your
probably
values,
don't have as
interests.
much to say about her because she was a super sweet woman who cared about my sister and I tremendously. And my dad, being a very harsh man, I think my mom taught us how to abide within that scenario and how to get along and keep yourself small in a way to
Hmm,
avoid. You don't want to be a big target,
that's
you
not
know,
good.
in
Yeah.
a family dynamic that I had, and that's what she did, and she taught us how to do that.
Hmm.
And I have a lot of pity for this. Yeah, I think about my mom. The situations I saw her go through when she was younger than I am now was tremendously heartbreaking. This is part of the old world South. Some people, I never had a. I didn't. My parents, like, they didn't divorce, but in a real sense, they did. My dad just continued living in the house and
Hmm.
didn't neither partner moved on, so to speak. So it was a broken marriage that just never divorced, like where nobody moved out. So you could imagine the sort of intense, sustained, uh, fractured tension that produced ongoing, and it never relented. So that was another reason to get out of Dodge as fast as possible.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay. And you used the word was. Is your mom passed?
yeah, 10 years ago this
I'm
year.
sorry. So she was probably a pretty young woman.
Yeah, 60, 62.
Hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you still have a good relationship with your sister?
Oh, a fabulous
Oh, that's
relationship.
nice. So you still have some family that you can relate to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So back to um
I'm giving you the randos conversation I never gave PVK, by the
well,
way.
we got to mix. We're mixing a little rando with a little bit of
Mm-hmm.
history in your book. With so your fascination with history. The, okay, I think you said art. your interest in art preceded your interest in history. What kind of artist were you as a teenager, young person? When did you start? I mean, were you always drawing something? Were you one of those kids, or did it just come upon you? Did you start trying to copy something that you saw in comic books, or what? Tell me something about how is an artist formed?
Yeah. The funny thing is, I always think this is, I've I've never heard someone answer this in an interesting way. So I always tend to hate the question, and I think but it's very fair to ask it, Mark. But the thing is that the origin story to an artist is the same as every kid, because all kids are drawing. I think what starts the story is why the kid keeps drawing when the other kids go play sports or do something else. The other kids at some point drop the crayon or the pencil and get more interested in something else. And then there's the 10% or the 5% that for some reason just there's a failure to launch into other habits or something, and they keep drawing and they don't stop. And part of that was me probably coping, like processing and being a quiet kid, kind of exploring the world in avenues that would keep me out of eyeshot of my father. And also because my mom, I think she kind of wanted to be an art, like she was just a very flower child, kind of intensely emotional. She was a therapist.
Oh, really?
She really brought that out and celebrated, like she wanted me to do that sort of thing. So I was following her inspiration in a way. And I was always better at observation based stuff than the drawing things out of my head thing. So Kyrie in a way is me trying to overcome that weakness. But I did end up finding, by the time I did go to college, I just kind of, I went to art school, which is an insane enough thing to do. Maybe that was my dad's way of like giving up on me by just releasing me to my fate, where I just wanted to double down on getting a fine arts degree. But I got an applied arts degree. I got an illustration degree. So I was going to go into the commercial sector, and I was going to draw stuff for, and I did for a time, hospitals, libraries, museums. These would be, you ever go to like a kid's library and everything is themed out to look like a jungle, and there's like monkeys hanging from, so they need like concept artists to come up with what the monkeys look like who are hanging and reading books that somebody's going to carve out of foam in 3D, and then like the little tree stumps that the kids are going to sit on, those have to be designed. So I was a concept artist for those kind of applied situations. And I was good at being a chameleon and at, which makes you money in the commercial sector, and at observational based stuff. And then at some point, and then I got married, and then I realized I need to do something a lot more than just, theming out children's libraries.
How old were you when you got married?
28.
Okay.
So then I went back to school and I pursued a medical illustration degree. So that was me applying and just accepting the fact that I was always going to be a second-rate children's hospital cartoon guy. But I could be if I applied myself, I could be a first-rate observation-based illustrator and get things accurate. I loved it. In a way, it was like a marriage of like my history and my art interests, because I was like, there's a way to be factual about art, and that's in the science art. You can actually be incorrect with your art by going that way. There's objective standards, and that was really fun. But there's also a lot of creativity within that. How can you demonstrate something that can't be photographed, or recorded in a video? How can you draw? There's a lot that has to be, that's educational material that can't just be, you can't see it in a lab. You just
Right.
can't. You know, think of all the pharmaceutical animations you've ever seen of little floaty spheres coming together and doing something like all that's there's no microscope that could ever show that. It's all made up.
So I'm guessing
So
you have some strong feelings about AI and how it's probably going to mess up the livelihoods of a lot of working artists in that field.
yeah, I'm a lot. The last 5 years has just been me trying to escape the clutches of AI. Honestly,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's like a shell game where I'm trying to hide my income so before the shell gets raised with the P in it, and then
Mm-hmm.
AI destroys me. It's tremendously challenging. It's tremendously challenging.
Do you feel now? See this again, Kyrie. Uh, Seems like a sharp right turn from or left turn, depending on how you see right and left. But it seems like a sharp turn, 90-degree turn from that what you just described. Because
Yep.
not
It's not science. It's not
it's a lot
medical
of
illustration.
creativity here, right? I mean, it's very what I was talking over you. What?
It's not medical illustration.
It's not medical illustration. It's it can't be easily replicated. I'm guessing somebody with prompts who's very gifted at it could approximate something like it, but frankly, I don't see how they could match it. And probably it would take them longer to do what you than a real artist. I mean, it just seems to me that it's just it's a steep climb for AI to do something like Kyrie. So you're doing something original. Do you feel like it's? I mean, tell me, is this? Does this have? I'm trying to come up with the right way of asking you. Well, how do you just see your own work here in the scope
Yeah.
of your career as an artist?
One of the things that returning, going back to school, helped me to do was that I could do the fun stuff not for a living anymore. I remember I had a teacher in undergrad, sophomore year. She said she knew very early on that she wanted to become a professor of art and to teach fine art because she knew that she did not want her fine art to be a tool by which she kept the lights on, by which she paid bills. She'd rather have teaching and the exploration and the intense, thinking and discussion of art. Oh, hold on a second.
No worries. Need to mute? Yep. All right. Looking at some of the chat. That combination of your interests is the magic sauce for finding your vocation. I like that.
Sorry,
No
boss was
worries.
calling, of course.
No
Um,
worries.
yeah, I highly recommend. This is something else you're going to like, Mark. Our generation, the millennial generation, was taught to explore that your career has to be a manifestation of your passions and interests. Like,
Right.
figure out what you're passionate about and then try to pay your bills with it. And that's the quickest way to kill your passions. So that's what I found out really quickly. And I was like, I liked art too much to try and pay my bills with it, at least the fun stuff. So I was like, I really want to do, I've been working on Kyrie for 10 years. I really want to do this. And I do not want to try and pay my bills with it. Because at the moment I do that, it's the lowest common denominator. You're going to be drawing what will get you the maximal return for the minimal effort,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So I love making boring stuff for a day job. If it means at nights I can work on the fun stuff.
Do you think so this is fun stuff for you? Just all fun.
All fun.
Okay. And the fact that you maybe a little bit of money to help cover the costs of getting it done. I mean, does it have any potential for real income for you, or is it's just like shoe shine money and just try to You're not doing. You'd pay to do this. Is it that level?
I mean, there's a chance, um, if I get the omnibus put together and I put it on Amazon or something, I can make a little bit of shoe shine money. But really, I sell them at cost essentially, which is the only way.
Really? That's
Yeah,
because they are very rich feeling books.
yeah.
For anybody who knows. So if you're getting it at cost, you're getting a bargain because they're very.
Hmm. Yeah. And really, you know what's it's funny, Mark, is like 10 years ago, this was the sort of thing you had to do as a calling card in order to connect with folks. You'd have to you'd have to start a project in a way and be online producing that project and sharing it. And it would be the means by which people got a media rich perspective on who you were and where your heart was. And then they'd reach out and want to, then you'd exchange numbers and you become friends. Nowadays, people just go live. And it's actually kind of cool. This wasn't the case 10 years ago. Even like 2019, 2020, it wasn't so much the case. What's kind of
This work.
fun is that people just do this now. And then now we just know Mark D. Parker. If he put out a book, I would absolutely want it on my shelf. But that would
Well,
be
because
after
we've
the fact
reversed
that I already
things.
wanted it.
Okay,
It's
interesting.
reversed. Yeah.
How are sales? I mean, without revealing any numbers, but do you feel good about your sales, or is it like I? When you put something? I mean, do three of these, and you got a fourth one in the hopper. What are
Mhm.
you? What's going through your mind in terms of where legacy or words like that? What are you thinking?
I mean, principally, it helps me. Like I dedicate them to family members. So I'm leaving something to nieces and nephews, in a way that inspires them, so they know from an early age that things don't just exist. There's people behind them, and they can reach out and do something themselves as well. Uncle Matt did it; they can too.
Hmm.
So that's a big motivation. I sell about a dozen sets a month.
Okay.
And so someone taught me early on is like, if you want to make an impact, do things that don't scale. It's kind of crazy. Like for instance, when Airbnb first got started, I think it was only in LA. It was in, or maybe it was San Francisco. It's probably San Francisco. And the CEO would just drive around and take professional photographs of the houses that were opting in at that early stage before there was any integrity or brand recognition to what Airbnb was. And that can't scale. You can't have the CEO driving around taking, doing professional photographs of your listing. But that made all the difference because then everything on their early site was professionally photographed and approved by the CEO. Do you know what I mean? So every set I can hand sign and do a drawing inside of. I wouldn't be able to do that. Throw the omnibus on Amazon, you can get it in 4 days, and it never touched my hands. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
So I'm trying to do things that that can't scale, so that people have an experience, and that's one of the fun things about crowdfunding. I'm waiting for a TLCer to try a crowdfund because it's so fun to you just make like a birthday present for people when you fulfill on a crowdfund something that you can't get off Amazon. Like
Well,
hand
almost.
personalized, like thank you. Without you, this couldn't exist, which is how
Right.
it is at my level of publishing. Without you, I this would not be. It really wouldn't. It'd just be a PDF on my hard drive.
Right.
You know.
Right. So it doesn't. You don't see it having a future as a digital book, even though on a tablet, these images I can imagine working pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, you can think. I mean, it's really a digital native book in a way. I mean, I make it on a computer, so you can purchase the PDFs.
Oh, you can? I didn't realize that for some reason. I missed that detail.
Yeah, maybe
Interesting.
you would have wanted to get the PDFs instead.
Well, no, just for, well, the thing that I would have liked about a PDF, or if I could, if it allowed it, would be on some of the darker images when it's nighttime or something.
Hmm.
I don't know if I can, like that. See, even under the light here, it's brighter. It's hard to. I was using my flashlight on my phone because I have old eyes to try to catch detail. Which, let's do this
Yeah.
real quick. Teach a complete novice, how to read a graphic novel, because I'm always wishing for more words.
Hmm.
And I
Okay.
know you're telling some of the story through your images. So
Well, which
how do you?
edition do you have?
I have the first. I have this. This is the first part one. In front of me.
Do you have a red cover or a yellow cover?
Oh, red
Okay.
covers.
So
Red
you've
with
got this
it's
stuff that
this.
helps.
Yes, I have the annotation. Yes, and I'd go back and look, and I did a lot of that. I read through the. And see, I got little tabs that kind of keep track of where I was, and
I like your tabs. It's fun.
so it was just, well, it was a way to go back. I keep track of where the annotation was, as well as keep my place in where I was reading, so I could go back and forth.
Yeah, you're right, Mark. There's always a risk. You kind of have to decide where you want to cut. You want to divide between saying too much or too little, and I probably erred on too little, especially in the first one. And part of that was the sort of comics I was reading at the time that would deal with a lot of mood and environment, and win you over as a reader with the feelings of the story without you understanding the technical details of what's going on. Maybe a lot of it would just go right over your head, but you'd be like, well, I'm getting the personalities of these characters, and that's what's going to bring me through. I saw a lot of people doing that really well in the 2010s. So what I was doing, particularly at the beginning, I was trying to explore that. Then in the book too, people said that it's just people walking and talking for the entire book.
Well, you see, that's the thing, is it's the
So,
way our brains work, right? One thing I noticed was when reading the book was the first half of part one was more challenging than the second half. Somewhere my brain clicked into yours. I somehow, it's just somehow
yeah.
trying to find that connection, and it took me time to make the connections. And my guess is it was all internal to me. It wasn't necessarily the book's fault. It was my lack of familiarity with the genre,
Hmm.
and just once I understood, it was unconscious. It just suddenly started to flow and became easier. So the last half was a much easier ride, strangely. And again, like I
Yeah.
said, it there's a learning curve. You don't think of a learning curve to comics, but I don't. It didn't. There was
Oh,
for me.
absolutely.
But I mean, I've literally never read a comic book through front to cover to end. Right? Never.
Hmm.
So this was my first
That's
graphic
amazing.
novel read ever. Total novice.
You know what's fun, Mark? Like, this is something that distinguishes graphic novels from books. Books and movies are linear. You can only read one word at a time, and you go through it the same way, right? It's sequential in that sense, and it's a rigid sequentialism. It's on rails. Comics are different. Comics are showing you several things at once,
Right.
and your brain can actually read them all, and is reading them all at once. At the same time, you're trying to treat it like a book, and you're trying to go top to bottom, left to right. And so
Mm-hmm.
your eyes are exploring the page as you turn the page, and maybe you look at both. You do like a little survey, and then you go back and you say, okay, now what actually is going on? And that's a unique experience. It's a feature, not a flaw, I think, of comics. It's so there's nothing out like it's closer to like sculpture, I think, in a way, where you're invited. Actually, it's not. It's such a weird hybrid medium because at some point, you got to start top left generally, unless you're trying to break that rule. But you aren't going to start there. You're probably going to start where the most contrast is or the most action, and there's fun little moments that you get to do in comics that you can't do. Again, you cannot do this in books, in novel, you can't do this in the printed prose, and you cannot do this in movies. I can play with the page turn. So you can get scene transitions, or you can hide surprises underneath the page so that when you turn it, you get, you get the payoff of the joke, or you get a surprise juxtaposition from the previous or something. But you get to physically have that happen. And unlike movies, and there's so many people trying to make. That's why I hate like comic book movie. If Henry's still in the chat, he'll know what I mean by that. Because it's not. Comic books are an active medium. It requires you to actively read the story for them to happen. Movies are a passive medium. You just have to turn on the screen. The movies read themselves at you, and you just get to tune in. You get to pay attention as much as you feel that you can with your ADHD that you've acquired in this modern age, right? But the comic doesn't read itself for you. It's going to slow down or speed up depending on your interest level, and all the distractions. So you get to play with that with the reader as you compose a page, and you get to say, hold on, actually want, if this were a movie, I could just, Spider-Man would just punch Doc Ock and he would have time to say like one syllable before that punch happens, right? But in a comic, I can have him say a paragraph while he's punching. And that's playing with stretching and compressing time in a way that feels natural when you're reading a comic. It's actually adds to the enjoyability of the experience, that it doesn't feel like you can tick off how many seconds are happening per panel. But with movies, you have to submit to the believability of time, So comics are very.
They seem like what you're describing for me in my experience in reading through this is that it's more poetry, more like poetry in a certain way than prose. And I was reading it like I read poetry, and over.
It's time to do it
over again, rereading, a lot of rereading passages, and also focusing and refocusing in parts of it. So you zoom in and out, just like you zoom in and out on a panel of the book, you zoom in and out of a poem, and will concentrate your attention, then expand it back out to the whole thing, keep going, and zoom in again if something catches your interest. But then that multitasking aspect that you talked about probably goes some way to explain why the genre is so attractive to young people. Is the brains are radically active and they're built for this. This is how they go through the world, in a sense, and we lose that with age. So then one more question along this line would be: has age changed the way you're 40 or going to be 40? How does age change? Has age changed your creative abilities around, good or bad, around this genre?
That's a great question. I mean, it's changed the sort of story. Everybody will tell you that you start writing a story, and then the story starts telling you how it needs to be written. And then by the end, you've written a different story than you set out to write. And it's kind of written you in the process. It's changed you. It's actually composed parts of you, it articulated parts of you, and it was a dialogue the whole time. And I know for myself, I started out with, a female and a male friendship, similar to the one that I had with my sister. And it was more of like a, Myra, the female in the story, she's leadership without strength, and that's a particular kind of brokenness that I can relate to, particular kind of fractured reality of, and there's a lot of means by which people try to accommodate or to navigate this broken world when they have leadership without strength. It's usually through cunning, manipulation, telling people what they want to hear and then doing something else. And then Marcellus is strength without leadership. And I saw a lot of that growing up too. And there's a particular way of coping with that sort of scenario when you feel like you have capability, but you don't have the means by which to execute on that. And a lot of the great stories out there are not about a list of characters, but in my view, it's more about who those characters are in relationship to each other. It's what dynamics do these characters have that really separates good stories from great stories. And so I'm trying to tell a story in a way where characters, if you've got a character that has, strength without weakness, and you got a strength without leadership, and another character that has leadership without strength, they're going to bring out, at their worst, they're going to destroy each other, because both their weaknesses are going to obliterate the other half. And at their best, they're going to complement each other, and they're going to help each other actually complete the other side of themselves. Not necessarily in the romantic sense, but in the sense of allowing the other to safely grow a side of them that had atrophied or underdeveloped, that was just vestigial because of how the world was. And that is what a lot of my 30s was when I was writing this. And now I'm at a point where I'm peering into another stage of life, and I'm thinking, how is this story helping me understand and anticipating where I might be going into at the back half of my life? And so the story in its conclusion is going to play a lot more with parental figures and legacy and settling issues and forgiveness and realizing that if you're playing this rules-based order where you're just listing off people who owe you something, owe you apologies, owe you stuff that they took from you, that they didn't treat you the way that you deserve. You're living under rules that are crushing you and destroying you. And if you have to break that rule and say, you know what, I'm going to forgive them, even though they have no capacity to apologize. I'm not even asking for an apology. I'm not waiting for an apology before I forgive them. I'm just forgiving them. Just forgiving them. And I genuinely, not just blithely, not so that I can get out of a debt, but because I care about them and I see myself in them, that I'm just going to forgive them. And then that breaks the whole cycle. And that's what this story is ultimately driving towards, is what that can look like for people, just trying to survive in this world. And again, like, I'm using Alexander the Great. I'm doing a little bit of fictional stuff with that, but not very much. Most of his life is.
Explain the Alexander the Great connection to your story, because it's set in, as you said, 3rd century Rome. What's the story is, but then there's an Alexander the Great component. Can you explain to people what that is?
Yeah, briefly, he is.
For those who don't know, Alexander the Great lived about 500 years before the story takes place, give or take, right?
Mhm. If
400 years.
if you wanted to make Rome great again, and if you had a chance to resurrect Alexander the Great to make him the next emperor, that'd be an awfully darn good way to make Rome great again. If you are of a particular persuasion about power and politics and state control and empire, and if you had a particular view of Alexander, you might think that that's what he would want, and that's what the empire needs.
So does this
So,
story end with Constantine? I don't know where we're going with. You said that the Kyrie, and we're within range. We're within kind of not easy range, but we're within range of Constantine in your story. It could be one human lifetime.
that's interesting. Um, I mean, I'm literally saying they're resurrecting the corpse of Alexander the Great. They're reanimating the mummy of Alexander
Okay.
to save Rome. And because what did Alexander want more than anything? He wanted immortality in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And what would that cost? What did that cost Adam and Eve? What did that cost Cain and Abel? what what did that cost many Roman emperors in history to reach for that? That's what we're plagued with. And I'm getting very personal in this story. My mom died 10 years ago. You could piece together the pictures of what I'm plagued with. What would it take if you could control life and death? What could you wield that? You know. So this is an autobiography, absolutely, as all stories really are. And it's a calling card for folks to get to know who I am. Hopefully, they get to know themselves and they can relate in a way. That's just all you can do in this life, particularly with art. You just have to cut yourself open. You got to flay yourself and say, here's my guts. What do you think of it?
Right.
Nothing,
Right.
nothing less than that. You got to
Do
show
you
the
have
very.
more stories in you, or you got a new? Do you have completely unrelated to Kyrie? Do you have anything else, or is Kyrie kind of like a lifetime project? And there'll be 25 volumes or something.
It's really going to end at 4, which makes it a
Okay.
graphic novel. By the way, graphic novel, it has a beginning, middle, and end.
Okay.
And comic books are just
Yeah, that's
Spider-Man.
true.
It goes
Right.
on forever. I've got other stuff. I think it'd be fun to do like a Cold War spy novel. All the things that middle-aged people like. Like,
Mm-hmm.
can I just get a lot more grounded? Do I have to tell a fantasy story? Maybe I can just do a cool gumshoe detective story and
Oh,
Eastern Germany in 1967 or something. But I don't know if anyone would read it. And honestly, I don't know if I have the energy to draw it. At this point, I'm just like, can I just get Kyrie out and then it is what it is?
sure. Sure. Do you have, we were going to keep this at 90 minutes. We're at an hour and 13. Do you want to field some questions from the chat, or are you ready? Are you pretty exhausted? You ready to close her down?
Yeah, we could chat for a few minutes with the chat if they've got anything that
See
they
if they've
want.
got, I'll put out the invite and see if anybody, this is the first time I've done an interview like this live. So we're playing it as we go, playing with it as we go. So there it is. Hop in if you want to ask Matt a question. Do my job for me.
Isn't he a great interviewer, guys?
Well, what should I have asked? I'm always curious about what did you want to talk about that I possibly missed? Jonathan Pajot stories? Do you have any of those?
I think I'm contractually obligated.
Obligated not to talk about it. He who shall not be named.
Actually, he keeps me at arm's length. He's very professional in that capacity. It's probably for the best. You
Good.
know, you
All
just
right.
kind of
Forget I even asked.
get it done. You know, you turn it in, and then
Good.
yeah.
Very professional. That's good. Um, so anything I missed that I should have asked?
What I'm curious what you thought of the story, even though I know it's a challenge to read in that format. Hopefully, it sounds like it got better over time. Were you like,
Well, I want to move on to the next one now. See, I've only done the first book,
oh,
and I
wow,
want to move on to the second. One
it's
thing I
much better.
noticed is that you're doing a bit of a, you're getting thicker with each one. So a little bit of a Harry Potter effect. It's not quite as
Yeah.
dramatic, but
Mission
each one
creep.
seems a little bit thicker than the other. Say again.
Mission creep. Yeah.
I surprisingly, the annotations did not help as much as I thought they would. They're interesting, but they didn't. But if
That's good
I
to know.
have some familiarity with the history, so most of the references I'm okay with that are in the story. So the story works by itself without the annotations, and I think
Oh, good.
that needs to, yeah. So I think the annotations are worth paying for. It's just not essential to enjoying the story.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. I feel
yeah,
like I probably would be failing at my job if you needed annotations to follow the story, for sure.
right. I would agree. I think you definitely want the story to stand on its own, and the annotations are just there to enrich it, and it does. Like I wasn't really aware that there was such a thing as a cult of Alexander.
And there still is.
So tell me about that, because that was new to me.
Oh, what just, you know, it's what you said about 300. All the different, Romans, we should be so we should remain fascinated by ancient Rome because Rome didn't actually do very much, except it did everything. It's very much like America. All it did was appropriate other people's ideas and mix and match them and make a lot of money off of them. And it didn't even create like it. You know, it was the Greeks that came up with comedy and tragedy and all these kind of philosophical
Mm,
categories and theatrical explorations. The only thing that Romans came up with was satire. That's the
hmm,
only thing in political commentary. That's it.
hmm.
And and there's nothing more Roman than complaining about Rome, which is
Right.
very American.
Mary. Yes.
And
Yes.
and they were consciously, they were consistently so self-conscious about the fact that they were founded on fratricide. You know, that's the founding myth, and they knew that that carried a serious twinge of tragedy in it. If you're founded in tragedy, how much of a success can you have? And they had different ways of retelling the story. You know, the Aeneid. There's other ways at trying to
Hmm.
get at that, but even that's like it's the tragedy of Rome, and out of or sorry of Troy, and out of Troy comes, um, and then guess what? There's Aeneas is shipwrecked in North Africa, and he meets a woman, and then there's there's a tragedy in that, and there's a Rome is defining itself against North African cultures and nations that it feels that it has to destroy. But the way that they tell that story is through is basically a love letter of, Carthage in a feminine aspect and Rome in its masculine. And they're constantly, as they win, every time they win, every time they conquer, they always feel intensely self-conscious about it. And they're like, maybe those Gauls were really more noble than we were. Maybe those
Mhm.
Britons really had something. Maybe Carthage was the one that got away.
Right.
nobody tells stories like that, and it really shapes the heart and the flavor, I think, of what a lot of the modern world is today. Rome is pulling puppet strings that we're not even aware of, I think, because that's part of our framework is like, do we want to be heaven forbid we like being an empire, because if we like being an empire, that's probably that's an empire you do not want to live in.
Mm-hmm.
Let it be a Roman Empire at least, where the entire philosophical structure is critiquing, making fun of the empire, maybe preferring the conquered over the conquerors, constantly battling and lampooning and regretting what it takes to actually have an empire, because if it would be better if there were no empires, according to many Romans, at the height of empire. But if there is going to be an empire, let's at least be one that is very self-conscious and has no self-esteem, because the tyranny will be softened. And that's something that the Greeks, frankly, never had insight into. It's one of their tragedies. They never kind of saw through what success, and they had a Peloponnesian War that
The
destroyed them, and
Greeks,
they never recovered from.
I think the
As a
Greeks
result.
never had an ironic sense of themselves
Yeah.
in the way that you're describing the Romans did.
Yep. Yep. They had a heroic sense that never saw. They would never make sculptures of old men in Greece. That's all Romans wanted to do. Old men and old women. They understood what decay was. They just, like, right from their beginning, they're like, this is all vanity. I love that about Rome.
Which would make them um, open to Christianity in ways that
Mm.
the Greeks might not have been. Even though, I mean, obviously, it's written. The New Testament is originally written in Greek. It's
Mm.
it took the empire to change Greek culture enough to the Romans to change Greek culture enough to make it receptive to
Wow.
the Christian message. It seems.
That's some good insight. Yeah. What did the Roman Greek East and Mid East, what did that particular colonial admixture, what was the flavorings of that Greece the Greeks themselves couldn't have come up with, or Italian Rome couldn't come up with? Mm-hmm. That's
Something to play with anyway.
mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure somebody's written a book on it somewhere. What do
Mm-hmm.
you think? Did another history question? Nobody's hopping into the chat. You're welcome to come in, folks. But we are going to talk about Matt and Matt's book. So this is not a wide open live stream, but you're welcome to hop in. The here's a fine. I can pitch this question because it seems in context. Did Christianity save the Roman Empire, keep it going for another 200 years when it was kind of doomed, or did it kill it, as some people say?
I think, and this was starting before Christianity. I think that everyone became Roman, and so no one was Roman. The last person who identified as the emperor of Rome was actually the last Ottoman emperor in the 20th century, when he voluntarily abdicated after World War One. That was the fall. It wasn't 1453. Thank you, William Branch, in the chat. It was 1918. Everybody, that's another thing that we can thank Rome for. This idea, and it happened in the 3rd century. The idea that Rome could be something that you could buy into as a citizen, and it didn't necessarily mean where you came from. It just means what you're going into, what you're adopting. And anyone could become Roman. That was a peculiarly Roman invention. The Greeks didn't come up with that. The Persians didn't. You
Right.
could,
And it happens
yeah,
in the 3rd century when that
yeah,
edict goes out, right? When
yeah.
it was a, I can't remember the name of the Roman emperor who he was kind of a
Caracalla.
that's it. Yes, wasn't a great emperor, but he did that. He universalized Roman citizenship.
And he thought he was the reincarnation of Alexander the Great.
Oh, see, I didn't know that either. That's good. I like
And
that.
he shows up in Kyrie 4, by the way. Spoiler.
Ah, exciting. So
Yeah.
tidbit. Mark S. Welcome.
Hey, Mark.
Mark Sola non-denomination something. you dotted out. What's non-denom? Mark.
Non-denominanon.
Na-na-ma-na-ma-na. Ba-doop-ba-doop. Do-do-do-do.
No,
No,
yeah,
no, no.
I've been enjoying this. I don't really, as with many TLC conversations, I feel like I know more than the general public, but then I know less about the people, less than the people who are talking about stuff, about what they're talking about. So when it comes to Roman history, I mean, it's pretty fascinating. But one thing I was wondering, Matt, did you see any deer?
I still don't have anything. I got one last shot first week of December, and that's it.
Have you seen any action out there?
No,
I
my
mean-
cousin has. Every time I go to a spot, I get the spot where nothing happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So much.
Well,
We contain multitudes.
I
I
wish you well.
forgot to ask about
Thanks, man.
Matt's hunting.
Yeah, we had our opening weekend on Saturday. So I went out. I had an encounter with a buck before the sun came up. It was like, but then it smelled me before the sun even came up and ran. That was the only thing I saw.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm happy. There's so many people. It's such a fun kind of envy to have when you see so many people having a great time and they're posting pics and they're filling their freezer, and they're like, I'm so thankful I get to eat this for a year. You're just like, man, I hope you are thankful. And they are.
Nah, they're just bragging.
Yeah.
Let me welcome Marylander in. What you
Hi,
got for
Marylander.
us, Marylander?
Great to see you again.
Hey, Matt. I had some meta questions for you, and then some technical questions. Which ones do you want first?
Let's start with the technical. That sounds fun.
In a graphic novel, font, especially for dialogue, is sure you can lose your mind, looking through all the serifs of the world, So what was the sort of philosophy, or if you could just describe the sort of moment you were like, I'm using this font, and why?
Well, at some point, you just have to go with something that's good enough, because perfect is the enemy of good enough. And that's why I went with Mighty Zeo. It was a free font from, I think, DaFont. And you didn't have to have any attribution to it. And I thought it was legible at the size, and it looked good with my art style. A lot of people will like make a font out of their handwriting, which is cool, but you kind of have, honestly, you have to have a legible handwriting for that to look good, So that was out the window. Yeah, you kind of, I just think it has to echo a similar direction of the visual art style. It's about pairing. It's not about, is it a good font? It's about, is it the right font to dance with the art that you got? It's about relationality. So it's not going to be a good font in other contexts.
Okay. Yeah, that kind of leads into my next question of like, did anyone review it? Like, did you, let's say, prepare a panel with like a few different fonts the same panel with several different fonts and show it to someone, and then did they say yes or no, and then did their yes or no align with yours? Because like sometimes when I show something to someone, depending on how I judge their taste, if they don't like it, that means I'm keeping it, and vice versa.
That's funny. I should have done that, and I didn't. I didn't know anybody. Nobody wanted to talk about this, not even my wife.
Oh no. My wife has had the same response to me sometimes.
Yeah.
God
Sometimes you have
bless
to
him.
make
God
something.
bless him.
Yeah. Well, but now, Mark, now you've like made things, and now you've got something that people can dialogue with. Now people can say, "Oh, I didn't like that bumper," or "I didn't," but it was after you made it. Sometimes you have to make it before you can get feedback.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
absolutely. I don't even know. Yeah, I'm always sending out trial balloons,
Yeah.
and 9 out of 10 are flops, or every once in a while, it rings, and you go, yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't always predict. No. But this is one thing about this. There's a lot of texture to your, like, just look at I'm showing everybody now, just the Kyrie. I mean, your choices to give it this texture with a variation of color. That's interesting to me. And because that's a choice. That just doesn't come out that way, right? You don't just, people think you type things in, and yes, computers make it easier, but that was an artistic choice, and you do that a lot throughout the book, of those sorts of things.
Yeah, I mean, lettering's not my strong suit, and line work isn't my strong suit. But coloring, I feel like I can play with color a bit, and it gets better over time. I promise. But like there's some people who think through visual art by doing a lot of little motions and movements, and they want to construct something, and that's like a penciler. That's like a person who wants to ink. That's a scribbler. And then there's like the people who just they want to do a stroke that like finds the shape in one go, and then maybe do some secondary carvings, but they want to get broad strokes and hit it. And that's more me. That's the more the painter version. And it's a challenge when you're drawing something and you're a painter. There's an inherent challenge with that. Mm-hmm. And the way that I square that circle is I lean into the colors. I let the line work stay light, kind of like Tintin. There's a lot of outlines, but I'm not doing spot blacks. I'm not scumbling, like I'm not shading with the line work. And I just try to let colors play with that a bit more.
Marilander, do you do painting? Do you do artwork like this? Because your questions made me think that maybe you do.
Not like this. I do analog, so like watercolor, acrylic, oil. Yeah, the digital space can be kind of overwhelming. When you have like every single color to work with, it can be harder to lay something down versus whether you have one or two colors to work with. But the palette is very consistent, and the sort of art style is very consistent, at least from what I can see. I don't have the book in front of me. Yeah, it's impressive. Well done. You're muted.
Thank you.
Now, my meta question is, would you classify this as a Christian comic book or graphic novel?
A Christian made it. There are Christians in the story. I think it's more interesting to always let other people inside the story who are not Christians let you know what they think of that person in that time, in that belief system. And I explored that. and they have radically different perspectives because everyone's still trying to figure out what's the agreed upon view of what Christianity is. Is it a threat to the state? Is it inherently subversive? Is it atheism? Christians were the first atheists, according to the Romans. Is it a Middle Eastern cult? That's overly influencing Roman politics. And that's more interesting to me to play with those things. But in a way, it is a Christian comic because it's playing with things that are intensely personal and central to ideas of sacrifice and submission in a way that I understand it through my experience in Christ. So it is in that sense, but it's not a retelling of a biblical story. It's a Christian story the way Lord of the Rings is a Christian story, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say it doesn't make sense, not like argumentatively or combatively, more of like my own failing to sort of understand, because like, for example, Martin Scorsese is considered one of the greatest, living film directors possibly of all time, despite film not existing for like as long as, say, pencil and paper, right?
Mhm.
And he's a Catholic, and Catholics are Christian, and he made the movie Silence, which is about Catholics, based on a book written by a Catholic. But I don't think most people would consider it to be a Christian movie. Whereas like God's Not Dead, which is crap, is a Christian movie. And what I don't understand is, why is it that things that are, stated like on the letterbox, like this is a Christian movie or this is a Catholic movie, why are they always crap? And um, when all the elements are there, like with like Chronicles of Narnia might be the only thing that is like sort of explicitly Christian, that isn't crap, and like I'm not going to die on this hill or whatever. It's just like we all kind of agree, right? And Remember the Titans has Christian elements, but it's not a Christian movie, right? There's Christians in it, but it's not a Christian movie. And like similarly, when whatever Sound of Madness or Cry of the Sound, or so, that Jim Caviezel like human trafficking movie that just came out, right?
Oh yeah.
Like he did the circuit, the media circuit, and sort of played up his like, Jesus is here to talk about my new movie. And he just came across like someone who's mentally unwell.
Yeah.
And that not only, his movie wasn't going to do well with the secular crowds anyways, right? But like that, I think, turned off a lot of his sort of whatever, like the mindless demographic that he was looking to exploit. And
Yeah.
I don't exactly know what I'm asking here, but I guess it's like, I would like to understand more deeply, like, why is it that when you say this is I have this message inside me and I'm going to use this art piece to proselytize this message, that it turns people off more than if you like hid it and never told anyone. Right, like that was the big argument between Tolkien and Lewis, why Tolkien didn't like allegory, because he's just like, it's too on the nose, like. And I think he sort of won that argument, at least in our modern day assessment of which is the greater fantasy, and which had more of, Lord of the Rings is the basis of all modern fantasy, like, period. So, I don't know. I hope I gave you enough to kind of wax on.
No, yeah.
If you want
well,
to at all, you don't have to.
I used to have a different take on this, and it's TLC kind of helped me have the confidence to say, well, none of us are standing from the perspective of nowhere, So if it has Christians in it, but it's not a Christian story, well, what is it instead? It's a story, but like, can we define and describe what the story is? And in some sense, every story exists in God's universe. So maybe are all stories Christian stories? But then, like, there's a relationship between the author and the story.
Is Boogie Nights a Christian story?
I know. So,
we're really we're stretching the Tom Holland thing a little bit much now.
In a way, I mean, yeah, that's a challenge, But I don't want to hesitate and just say,
I'm playing with you, but yeah, I get it.
Don't worry, this isn't like God's Not Dead 3. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's okay for there to be Christian stories.
Well, you could ask even, okay, say something like The Chosen, right? I mean, of all the kind of stories, all the movies are, in this case, it's a TV series, but it's all the attempts to put the gospel narratives into something that is decently rendered for that medium, film, video. Mm-hmm. It does a pretty good job. Now, but is it explicit? Is it just a good, a retelling of the story that is favorable to those who believe in it? Even if it's something that's favorable to them, does that necessarily make it quote unquote Christian? Even though Christians may recognize it as something that they find appealing, or at least many of them do, it doesn't. It's as opposed to The Chosen versus, see here, Luke. With William Brandt's pointing out The Last Temptation of Christ. One was heavily criticized. That's also Scorsese, by the way. One was a critical telling of the story. The Chosen is is not so heavily criticized. So I've lost the thread of my question, but I don't
maybe
know if
in a way it's less Christian when you make, I don't know. I don't like The Chosen very much.
Right. There's a lot of, I've stopped. Yeah. I kind of, but it's very popular.
It is. You're right. No, yeah, that's undeniable.
Even Joe Rogan liked it, apparently. So he says.
Oh, that's funny. That's weird. Well, I guess like the difference seems to be when people can notice there's a strong autobiographical component to it, where it's really about as author, my experience. Like this is my portrayal of, like, I'm exploring a particular world, and this is my perspective within it. You know what I mean? And if you're the orienting vision, which is in a way more honest, because all stories have you as the orienting vision, you as author, like that. You don't want to call that a Christian story because you're not Christ. So maybe that's what makes it a little more. You're like, well, all you're doing is showing me you. That's like a peer-to-peer relationship that's less authoritative. You're inviting me to get to know you as a friend, as a person. And if through your view, you might be a Muslim or Jewish or atheist or Christian. And that doesn't make it a Christian story. It makes it your story. And that's more invitational, and that I absolutely respect. That's exactly what Kyrie is, but whereas when you just say, like, I'm going to do David and Goliath, but in space, like, that starts to feel like I can't really see where your orienting picture is in that, and that, so I feel like you might try to manipulate me like the Chosen does in little ways.
Mhm.
You're like, well, you changed it a little bit. Why did you
Good
do
art
that?
versus, now we're in the realm, really in the realm of what is really good art and what's bad art.
Yeah, and honest art at least allows you, it gives you the hospitality of accepting or rejecting it on its face in a way, rather than one that feels like it has a mission or a goal or objective that's trying to do with you, and I can't quite see you while you're doing it. You know, you're not putting yourself in the front, you're kind of behind the curtain doing something, and that feels suspicious, you know, and a lot of Christian art feels that way.
In some ways, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, I was going to say, like, you're right. The writing about yourself is the original sin of writing, of artistry, and
Yeah.
I'm agnostic as to whether or not you can be baptized from that sin. But go to any creative writing 101 class. It's it's everyone's just like doing a self-portrait on themselves as a secret agent or as a knight or as a whatever, right? Like,
Sure.
Oh yeah.
And so, like, but I have this story that, like, I want to flush out, like, beyond an outline, and the main, the protagonist is devout Christian, and there are Christian themes that are, like, fundamental to how the story works, so to speak, of, like, God existing and there being this spiritual, it sort of blends spirituality with thermodynamics in a for the sake of horror or thrill. But like, I don't want someone to think it's a Christian story, right? And like, you should not come away from it like thinking you need to go to church, like, as if I told you that, right? If you choose to do that, like, so be it, right? But, like, I want it to combine those elements more in the way that, like, Raiders of the Lost Ark did, instead of the way that I don't know, Left Behind did, or the Omega Code, right? Like, the Omega Code was crap. Raiders of the Lost Ark, it might be one of the top 100 films ever made, stories ever told. And so, like, there's something about these deeply historical, traditional, powerful symbols that can give your story, like, a richness that just like a Cormac McCarthy book will never have. But similarly, like, if you fly too close to the sun, your wings will melt and you'll end up in a Christian bookstore next to VeggieTales.
A fate worse than hell.
Lewis talked about like looking at a beam of light versus looking along the beam of light, and what a radical difference that would give in your perspective, and he thought, his goal, at least with the Narniad, was, or results may vary as to whether or not he succeeded at this. Certainly Tolkien did, but his view was like, it's better to write as if looking along the beam of light. Now, you can't describe what the beam of light is as much, but through that light you can see what the light is illuminating. Does that make sense metaphorically in terms of story? I think Christian art oftentimes is trying to get an outside view of nowhere and to tell you what to think about the beam of light. And so it's perspectiveless and is actually kind of hollow and doesn't actually look through it. It doesn't situate, the author isn't situating themselves inside the beam of light, so you can't see inside the beam of light. So you can't actually look through it into what the source of illumination is, because you've refused to be situated yourself, to have a perspective. It tries to be objective about it, and so it obliterates the author's ability or the reader's ability to engage with the thing itself, because we can only engage at a human level with these categories. But if the author isn't going to engage at a human level, then the reader can't either, because the author is going to carry the reader on his back as he explores something. And there's a humility in getting into the beam of light and saying, I can't see. It's, you get in the beam of light, it's going to block out now all the shadowy stuff. I can't see it as much. I can't really talk about my relation to the beam of light, but now I'm seeing something through that is exceptional. And I want to talk about that. And my situated relationship is going to be how that gets explored, that's very abstract. I don't know if that lands.
No, it's very astute and profound. And if I were to de-abstractify it, it would be like, you can either be obsessed with Jesus or you can be obsessed with what Jesus was pointing at, right? Like, and, or at least that's how that's how I'm going to leave this conversation. And if you led me astray, I'll blame it on you.
Thanks, Marylander.
Thank you so much, Marylander.
Thanks for chatting.
Always love talking to you.
I love talking to you too. And I'll see you at the next FBI field office meeting.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for hopping in.
Yeah.
And then last question goes to Mark Solananda Namanamana.
Yeah, I got a quick comment and then a quick question. I don't know if you've seen the trailer for the new Nicolas Cage movie that's coming out, where he plays Joseph, like Jesus' stepdad.
What?
And it's about a young Jesus like dealing with demonic powers when he's a kid, and it's a horror movie, and it's like, I love horror movies, especially demonic horror movies. And the first thought was like, I want to see it so bad, but at the same time, there's just going to be like blasphemy and heresy all through it. And even though I didn't really see anything explicitly problematic in the trailer, but I kind of don't want to watch it just because. But
on this point, just on this point, there, and I think PVK touched on it at some point, but there is something weird that Jesus has become infinitely malleable to the culture in ways that are almost diametrically opposite to how Islam has elevated Muhammad. And you can't, you can get killed for drawing a picture of Muhammad, right? Just a sketch, and publishing it can get you whacked in some parts of the world. And outside of the Muslim world for doing that. But Jesus can be a superhero. Jesus can be, as you say, demon hunter or whatever, child demon hunter. Jesus can be almost anything to anybody, and you can get away with it.
He's in an anime.
Well, even
anime. Whatever you want to do with it. So what do you guys think of that?
Going around, and it's played straight, and it actually, I don't feel like it's terribly blasphemous. Other than,
the question then is which is more colonializing? Which has the more colonializing power?
And
the infinitely malleable Jesus or the rigid, frozen in time Muhammad?
Well, even if you're like a punk or metal record might have like a blasphemous, like Jesus, doing something terrible, like on the cross. Like there's a punk band that has like a naked woman on a cross.
Mm-hmm.
And so even that, and a Christian will see that and be like, yeah, oh well. It's like it's even able to be hated and accepted, in its hatedness.
One gets a sense Jesus, no press is bad press. Jesus is like let me in any way you wanna, and I'm still gonna mess you up with your worldly expectations. I'm still gonna infect you with my Holy Spirit, my power. I mean, Jesus just. It doesn't seem to. My point is, or my question to you guys is it doesn't seem to hurt Jesus. All this blasphemy, all these attempts to use him, never seems to damage his mission in the world. That's my perception. What do you think? And then we'll wrap it because I promised to keep this at 2 hours. I'm going to break my promise at this point if we don't shut her down.
What do you think, Mark?
Well, I think if even if people are blaspheming, he's still living rent free in their head. So, you know,
That was a work of art. Piss Christ,
I think.
right?
Do you guys ever? Did you see? There is a photograph. I think it's at the Museum of Modern Art called "Piss Christ."
It's what Foxman just pointed out. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's had a lot of. I remember a lot of millennials. There was. I mean, it's been divisive ever since it was created. And I remember a visual artist once saying, he was Christian. He said, how can we be mad at Piss Christ? Because that's the depths to which, I mean, the artist was making commentary about the Catholic Church and the scandals of the 90s and the pedophilia and all that. And he was saying that we were desecrating Christ. And so he was making commentary on that. But the piece kind of misspeaks, so to speak, because it doesn't quite just say that. It kind of stands on its own. And you either say this is actually defamatory of Christ, or you read it intuitively as saying this is the depths to which Christ lowered himself to raise us up. And you love Piss Christ. You love the piece. Or
it's a visually compelling image.
It is.
I mean, if you take I'm sure you've seen it and looked at it closely, but go check it out, folks. It's deceptive in that way. It even probably to the artist, as you're suggesting that it.
Yeah.
All right.
no comment.
Yeah. And there's no wrong answer to that.
No, there is no wrong answer. You have a right to be angry.
Yeah.
At it. On the other hand, I found it to be, when I actually went and looked at it, it was startlingly good from an aesthetic perspective. It had real artistic power to me. That made me drawn to Christ, not repelled. If the intent was to make me, it didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had a question. I don't want it to lead it to a long answer, but I was wondering, being somebody who does your work as an avocation, how much time would you say you spend on it per day or per week or something?
I mean, it's really kind of patterns and habits that I've developed. Well, my wife had a different sleeping schedule than I did, and you really start to figure out how to just get a page done in a few hours. Maybe 5 hours, thereabouts, because you want to keep the pace going, and you don't want to get bogged down or discouraged. The lack of work. If you got to get it under 10 hours. You got to get a full page done in under 10 hours, drawn, colored, and lettered. And that's been the pace I've had. And I can it'll be like a page a week, honestly, is all I can do at this age. There's been times where I've gotten more done, but then again, also it's true that if you want to get something done, ask the busy person to do it, because they're already amped up, so the most pages I've gotten done were at the times when I was the most busiest in the way and just had to decompress, so I'd taken out a couple hours at 10 p.m. at night and draw. It's better than getting me into other kinds of trouble. So, you know,
Do you write the story?
Sure.
Last question is, did you write the story before? I mean, is all the dialogue in this, do you do a rough sketch of everything before you go, or do you just one panel at a time?
I think it's important that, you know, they call them thumbnails, and I really try to
Right.
draw them the size of my thumb on pencil and paper. And if it looks good at that size, I feel like it's going to work compositionally when it's 8 by 10 or whatever it is, 6 and, you know, whatever it is in that book.
Okay. Interesting. I could see you teaching someday. You could, maybe this is how you could make a living in the future after AI has taken everything else away, as you could run workshops.
Yeah. Listen, kids, let me show you how to
How it's
prompt
done
better
old
videos
school. Yeah.
out of
How it's done the old fashioned way.
back in my day. Yep.
No, I'm serious. Who knows? Our conversation, and I will really close with this, is our conversation made me think that maybe the future will bring back true hand-drawn illustrated manuscripts. And it may not be in whole books, but you might sell it as wall art, or it may end up in, but we'll just, the hand done, the human created, that's the ultimate, right? I mean, it was kind of the height in some ways of.
Mm-hmm. I hope you're right, and I hope, just like there's all these
Real
technologies
parchment.
that are democratizing our ability to freely express ourselves, and that's fun and exciting. But increasingly, you know, ever since the Brownie camera, it's just pushing a button to express yourself.
Right.
It's
But
not-
you're even a deer hunter. You can manufacture your own parchment.
That's a good point. Yeah. and as this world gets increasingly, you know, where the expectation of self-expression is pushing buttons,
Mhm.
I hope that more of us, not just, I hate the word, like, I hate identifying as an artist. Like, I don't, it just doesn't, that's again, that millennial expectation that you are what your career is, you know? I hope more of us just learn to pick up the pencil and the page again and make stuff that's useless again. Make stuff that doesn't have an economic output, you know? Express yourself in ways that don't involve clicking buttons or having a subscription, you know? Or it doesn't involve liking and subscribing, you know? All the joy of drawing things for your children or your nieces and nephews, you know, just pencil on paper. That's a magic that we all have access to. And we all honestly need to express, and don't just need to rely on a priestly class of artists, quote unquote, to express for us. You know, we all have to round our humanity out in this inhumane world through like tactile, hand, you know, manual expression. And there's 1,000 ways to do that. It doesn't have to be drawing stuff, but I imagine people sense that now and are going to be exploring that with more intensity, you know, and that's great. And I hope they don't feel like they have to call themselves an artist to do that. I hope they just do it. Never mind what it's called.
At that, we'll
Well, that's-
close. One last thought, Mark Solas.
No, I was gonna say something to just keep on dragging us on forever.
I've got to close it. I told them
No.
we'd stop at 2 hours, and we're 2 hours 3 minutes 49 seconds.
Yep. All good. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark Sola non and Matt C. Matt Crotts. People, go to the link, put in your order. Even though he says it's not about the money, man, it's about the Benjamins. Let's keep him in Benjamins.
Yeah.
It's all about the Benjamins.
Yeah,
And,
I got a copy. It's nice.
It is beautiful.
Good.
It's beautiful, beautifully done. I mean, there's tons more you could ask. This has been a great time, and I'm glad we spent 2 hours together talking about this. So
It's been amazing. I've wanted to talk to you, Log4, Mark, for a while now, honestly. So didn't see you in Chicago. This is kind of the IOU that I've owed you for a while to have a chat. So thank you so much for this
Oh, thank
opportunity to
you.
talk about comic books, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, nice. Very cool. And this is what it looks like, at least part of the front cover. It is beautiful. It is really beautiful. So, guys, everybody, have a good day. Thanks again, Matt Crotts. And it is CurierComics.com. Can be found on the World Wide Web. Link is pinned in the chat, and I will put it in the show description later today. I'll link if I remember. But yes, it will be there. All right. Thank you, guys. And thanks, Matt, again. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
That was good.